Siu from the Committee of Hawaiian Nationals. Today, November 23, 2013, marks the 20th anniversary of U.S. President Clinton's signing of the landmark U.S. Public Law 103-150, popularly known as the Apology Law. With this law, the United States admitted to and apologized for its illegal actions beginning in 1893 that led to the overthrow and the usurpation of the Hawaiian Kingdom. To mark the 20th anniversary of the U.S. Apology Law, Hawaiian nationals and other independence advocates gather at noon today at Iolani Palace to comment on what impact, if any, the 1993 apology has had. Unfortunately, the apology law has been used mostly by the United States and the U.S. imposed state of Hawaii to attempt to degrade the status of the Hawaiian people into an ethnic racial group to be relegated as an apartheid-like Native American tribe. The notorious Akaka Bill, the Kaulinoa List, and now Kanai Oluwalu, the Native Hawaiian Rule, are three examples of the apology law being used to capture Hawaiians' identity, consent, and their lands to the Hawaiians' detriment. With us today are others who would like to share their mana'o, their insights about the apology 20 years later. I'd like to call upon Iolani Vaughn.
Aloha. All you press people, thank you for coming. All I can say is that in 1993, I happened to be working for Governor Waihee our first Hawaiian governor, in the Office of International Relations. And what fell to me was to represent him on the Onipa'a Committee, which organized the 5 days of observance of the overthrow of our king. I took it very seriously then. I will say that it was Governor Waihee who was very instrumental in acquiring the apology, what we call the apology bill, through his friendship and association with then President Clinton. So I think that with all the good intentions, receiving an apology from America sounded inspiring and uplifting at the time, but here we are 20 years later, and I look at it this way: when you apologize to somebody for wrongdoing, what has to come later is the methodology or the process of correcting that wrongdoing. And I think it's just basic to human relationship, very, very simple. I step on your foot, I say I'm sorry, I pay for your doctor bill to fix your foot. America needs to honor, and America is an honorable nation. You hear me talking in terms of being a Hawaiian Kingdom citizen, which we really all are. Our ancestors were. The Kingdom of Hawaii was never legally overthrown. I served in the United States Army through Hawaii National Guard. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam conflict. We were calling it conflict then, not war. So I think I've earned the right to speak, especially about Hawaiian sovereignty rights. I'm on both sides of the equation. But we just haven't seen any advancement. So here we are, gathering in this very Hawaiian way. I get an email or a phone call, and I hear from Leon what he's trying to do. I made some phone calls to other leaders who have their own processes in effect operating, and I was hoping they would be able to come out as well. But this is a last minute affair. But it's important that we discuss the issues. That's what we'll be doing afterwards, is to talk. I've talked a lot already. Thank you for coming.
Aloha, my name is Pokalai Nui. I am presently the chairperson of the Hawaiian Convention, the Native Hawaiian Convention. Apology resolution can also be called a confession, because it is nothing less than a confession that the Americans came in here and took over our nation. 20 years can also be called a generation. After 100 years, they finally confessed to the fact that they overthrew a legitimate government, and they continue to persist in that occupation and colonization process. A generation later, nothing has happened. It's not only the United States of America, the state of Hawaii has also been complicit in the continuation of this occupation and colonization. In the same year, 1993, the state of Hawaii, the legislature adopted a resolution also confessing to the illegalities that occurred back in 1893. More than that, they started a process in which they promised the Native Hawaiians that if the Native Hawaiians elect their delegates to meet in a convention and then come out with some proposal to the Native Hawaiians as to what the Hawaiian nation should be, that they would support that Native Hawaiian convention. But when they found after we were elected, we met in convention, we were ready to come out with two proposals. One for an independent Hawaiian nation that was inclusive of many of the different races, many of the different cultures and the rest, just as Hawaii had been back in 1893. And the other option, to choose to be integrated into the United States and let the Hawaiians choose for themselves. Both the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the state legislature withdrew continuing funding. In other words, a promise was made but still unkept, both by the state legislature, by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, as well as the United States Congress. So the question for us is, what do we do now that a generation has passed and no action has been taken? The people themselves need to start understanding, first of all, that we have no obligation to continue financing our own colonization. Every year, April comes along and they require that we pay homage to the United States and the state of Hawaii. Well, it's about time that more of us recognize that all we are doing is participating in that continuing colonization, and we need to start taking action. More of us need to start challenging the very jurisdiction of an illegal government in which they confess that they are illegal, and yet they keep incarcerating our people, especially those who say you have no jurisdiction over us. Look at your confession back in 1993. You admit that you have no jurisdiction, and yet the judges here continue to find jurisdiction over our Hawaiian nationals. So that kind of idiocy needs to stop, and rather than simply sitting back and waiting for the colonizers to commit those errors, we ourselves as the victims must stop being victimized ourselves, and we all need to participate in releasing the current colonization from us. Thank you very much.
And our next speaker is Filipo Souza.
Aloha kakayaka, I'm Filipo Souza. I am a Hawaiian national. We're here today basically on the 20th anniversary of the so-called apology bill. If all of you can recall when you were children, one of the first things that you were allowed to do when you left your house and you left the confines of your parents or your tutus, before you did so, you had to learn the truth. Whatever you said and did, you were responsible for. The sovereignty bill is completely against that. In 1993, it was proclaimed. All Hawaiians were just elated. And they took place and filed different documents and what have you. I, for one, in 2001, I finally stood up and said, no more, I don't play. Okay? They sent me to prison for 1 year. Entirely based not only on the apology bill, but all that took place before that. I am here also as a member of a committee of Hawaiian nationals. The Committee of Safety had 13 people to start. Once they became successful, all of a sudden, overnight, they grew to 18. And then within a week, there were thousands, about 1,300. And this 1300 said, we don't want the monarchy no more, we don't want the Hawaiian Kingdom anymore, we are the new government. Committee of Hawaiian Nationals, I can assure you, we have at least 20 right now. And we are soliciting people to enroll here. But I'm going to read a statement for you people. I want to thank you for coming, taking your time to come. Resolutions for the apology. Apologizing for the offense is only a meaningless gesture, if not followed by sincere efforts to resolve the offense. So far, the United States has done nothing but use the apology bill against the interests of the Hawaiian people, in particular Hawaiian nationals. This has to stop. On the 20th anniversary of the apology law, the Committee of Hawaiian Nationals calls upon the President of the United States, the U.S. Congressional delegation from the United States of Hawaii, the Governor of the United States State of Hawaii, the Legislature of the United States State of Hawaii, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs of the United States State of Hawaii, and all other officials of the United States, Hawaii, and the United States of America to take substantive actions to remedy the 120-year lie. The only proper and just remedy would be for the U.S. to end its unlawful occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom. The occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom was largely based on the Spanish-American War, 1897 starting. And they went into the Philippines. They used Hawaii as their training area. Iolani Park, all over the area was encampments. And they went into the Philippines. This was a short war, only 3 months, 4 months at the most. And then they started to still build troop buildup in the Philippines. The Filipino nationals who fought with them side by side in the trench started to realize, why are there 40,000 United States troops? Why are there 50? Why are there 60? When is it going to stop? What are you here for? And they ended up in a war with the United States of America, out of which 200,000 plus Filipino nationals died. Filipinos of Hawaii don't remember that. You know where I learned that? In prison, an old Triple C. When an elder Filipino man gave me a little handbook, and he told me, read this. So anyway, these are the kind of things. Now it's 120 years they've been here. So we are calling upon them to leave. Therefore, we call upon the United States of America to provide a honest, workable, and exit strategy, including timetables. You people in the news media know about exit strategies and timetables. Yeah? That's in the Middle East. Yeah? Russia was in Afghanistan almost 16 years before America. Yeah? Now America is trying to push that to 16 years for them. A peaceful, graceful withdrawal of the entire Hawaiian archipelago, which comprised the lawful territories of the Hawaiian Kingdom. We call upon the immediate adoption of the Hawaiian Kingdom laws to be administered in the Hawaiian Islands during the period of the transition and execution of the U.S. exit plan. We call upon the end of this discrimination and persecution of Hawaiian nationals living in the Hawaiian Kingdom. I do not possess a state ID. I do not possess a state driver's license. I possess a Hawaiian Kingdom operator's permit and an identification. The only thing that, I don't know how wealthy you people are, but the only thing that belongs to us and nobody can take away unless you say, I submit, is your identification. That has been coerced into numerous applications that keep us in this big circle of slavery. And when you're in a circle, you never know where the end is, right? All you do is make the circle bigger. And you expand, you expand. Everybody thinks they're going somewhere. Yeah? You're not going nowhere. When you're in a rectangle, you come to the end, you bang your head. Oh, gee, wake up. I want to thank you. Aloha.
Our next speaker is a gentleman named Robert Cordero.
Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity to share my life with you folks. My name is Robert Cordero. My father is Arnold Cordero. My mother is Charlene Cordero. The implications of U.S. Public Law 103-150 hasn't been as fruitful as I hope. For myself, my belief in apology by the U.S. prematurely allowed me to have confidence in expressing my true identity. My grandmother is pure Hawaiian. I was raised in a family where we were still held down by the Western principles. Where it was, a lot of Hawaiians are still afraid to practice their culture. And my grandmother was one. And being a pure Hawaiian, coming from a culture based on love principles and not on capitalistic principles. We live in a constant, struggle with the Western principles. So the apology, U.S. Public Law 103-150 allowed me confidence in expressing my true identity as a Hawaiian national. Unfortunately, in expressing my true identity, I run as a Kanaka of this soil. So all my allegiance goes to the Hawaiian Kingdom. I do not have a license plate as an American citizen. I run with allegiance to the Hawaiian Kingdom and to Heavenly Father. And I found this to be painful and devastating. Without any warrants or without law, I've been discriminated against because it seems that my identity alone is a threat to jurisdiction. And 103-150 supposedly gave me confidence and that it, once and for all, applied the correct jurisdiction to those of us who understand who we are. Unfortunately, people like HPD, judicial officers, do not completely understand who we are as a people. They do not understand the implications of 103-150. And I've been removed from my home in front of my children. I've had property, my car taken from my home and destroyed without any warrants. I've been in jail 4 or 5 times for being required to travel, purchase groceries. My kids have been taken away from me, returning home from the beach. And I've been put in jail because I'm traveling as a Hawaiian national. I've endured a 15-day hunger strike, being in prison without knowing why, without being able to see a judge. I'm suffering under subject matters in court not being applied correctly simply because I'm being discriminated because I'm being identified as a Hawaiian national. So, U.S. Public Law 103-150 is a failure. I'm grateful for the opportunity that the court had to inspire these individuals and apply correct principles in issuing that law, like President Clinton. I'm very grateful for his application of law and his understanding. But what's very sad is the understanding we have here upon this soil. By the people that have been raised by a system that has kept us under occupation by firearm. And so we are under judicial authority that are used to imposing their authority through force. They're not used to imposing authority through law. So 103-150 was to rectify that for those of us who understand that we are Hawaiian nationals. And we understand that we don't have to join a kingdom because we are born vested into a kingdom. So we don't need to join a kingdom. There's no foreign requirement for us to claim our rights. Once you are born here, but you live here for 2 years, you are vested as a Hawaiian national. We are not separated by blood. We're not even separated by continent also. We're united by blood. The solution for us is to understand that America operates under capitalistic principles. Like an insurance company that is not able to afford its practices and the administration is not being honest. So for us to wait for them to reimburse their injuries to us will take a long time. understand that they're not in a position to afford the help that I need. 103, 150 is a help that I'm hoping the education system and everyone realizes answers the questions of jurisdiction. Thank you.
Iolani Sam.
Aloha mai kākou. There's many ways of articulating our history from the past to the present. And for those of you that are beyond just having to comprehend words, on behalf of the Pacific Justice and Reconciliation Center, again, action speaks louder than words. It's been nothing but words and nothing but lies. So as far as I'm concerned, the real truth needs to be said, and it comes from my people, from my na'au, not from anyone else's na'au visiting that have overstayed their welcome here in Hawaii. They continue to be guests, and they have overstayed their welcome, so guess what? They're unwelcome guests now, and as far as I'm concerned, the rape continues. I call Hawaii Rape Nui. We've been raped big time, and it continues. So enough with the words. I want actions of truth. That's all I ask. Be pono. And for those that truly understand that, it's my people that will be the only ones to understand what's pono in this piko here in the universe. Hawaii was created for love and for aloha, but not for rape. And again, I walk with my cane here, and there's a reason. Stop the rape. Enough already. Enough already. Okay? Mahalo nui. Mahalo.
We have just one more short speaker, and his name is Kelly. We actually have two more. So Kelly Makekau.
Hi guys. Basically, today on the 20th anniversary of the Apology Bill, I would suggest that perhaps a lot of Hawaiians are dismayed about the situation, plainly in point because of the state's interference with this process. The United States kind of came forward basically with their resolution and said that they violated the Kingdom of Hawaii, and thus the incorporation of Native Hawaiians into the United States has begun. Ever since then, there's been seeking redress about this matter, but until the Hawaiian people can formally come together on that process, we keep having hindrance with the state of Hawaii and this matter. And we basically are kind of dismayed at that problem, at that process. We want our chance to collectively come together without any more usurpation from the state. And today's a prime example. It's the 20th anniversary, and people can honestly say what has been done, what has been accomplished. The state can basically attest to its efforts. The people of Hawaii are basically kind of saying that the state should stay out of this. That is not self-determination, nor is it a representation of self-governance. This is supposed to be a free and independent process, and yet hasn't happened, and especially when resources itself have been withheld from us from achieving that. So we would like to say we would like to continue this effort, but have full security and notion that we can do this on our own part. Basically, that's it. Thank you.
One final speaker. This is Pono Ke Aloha.
Aloha. My name is Pono Ke Aloha. I've kind of learned through the hard way about what this is really all about, as far as our legal occupation, or piracy, I should call. I remember when I was a small kid holding my hand over my heart and putting my other hand up to the flag, not understanding what that was all about. When I turned 50 years old, with the help of a lot of other friends, I gave up my so-called citizenship, and I'm a Kanakamo'oli. I'm a Hawaiian national. The continuation of genocide that has proceeded through 1893 and continuing on today and passing on to other nations through my sovereign nation is hevel. It needs to stop. We need to stop this war that's killing and killing people needlessly because of capitalism. Again, I do a lot of documentation. I see things happening up front. If anybody needs to know any more education, I should call it, need to go either to HawaiianKingdom.org or Pono Size. Google Ponosize, P-O-N-O-S-I-Z-E. I have over 860 videos. 98% of that is all Nakamo'oli issues. Again, please stop the genocide. The apology bill isn't worth the used toilet paper it was written on. Mahalo. Aloha.
Well, we want to thank you for coming today, and if you want to get any other follow-up information, as Pono said, there are several websites. One of the websites you should look is hawaiiankingdom.net as well. So, for those of you who it's the first time of your exposure to the term Hawaiian national, we actually have some legislation in place to recognize Hawaiian nationals, and we're going to be pushing that this next legislative session. The idea is to acknowledge that Hawaiian nationals do exist, and that we're a lawful people. We are on our own lands, and that we want the persecution and the discrimination to stop. There's a sheet here, a white sheet. I'm not sure if you've gotten that. If you have, that explains a little bit more. So, anyway, mahalo for coming.